I have always been drawn to the stories that make you check the locks twice. The ones told in hushed tones around late-night fires, or found in creased journals detailing encounters that defy all logic. From whispering ghosts in abandoned hallways to shadowy encounters in quiet woods. These are the tales of terrors that lurk just beyond the edge of our vision. So turn the lights down low and get ready to confront what goes bump in the night. You're listening to Don't Whistle to the Wind. Hello and welcome in, my little horror fiends, to episode 2 of Don't Whistle to the Wind. On this episode, I will be reading to you 4 short graveyard shift horror stories, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Our first story is called I Work the Graveyard Shift at the Odeon Theater House, and There's Something Wrong with Screen 9. I've worked the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift at the Odeon Theater House for 2 years. It's usually the easiest money you can make, sweeping up popcorn, ticket sales, emptying trash bins, watching pirated movies in the booth during slow times, and avoiding the manager at all costs. But last night was different. It started around 3 a.m. while I was sweeping Screen 9, a theater that had been closed for maintenance all week. I was alone and the lights were on the low setting. While sweeping row G, I heard it, a slow, rhythmic scrunch, sounding as if someone were walking through popcorn. I stopped sweeping and yelled out, "The movie's over and this screen is closed." The noise stopped immediately. Thinking it was a mouse, I turned on my flashlight, searching for it, to prove to myself that was what made the noise, and to be honest, to stop the uneasy feeling forming in the pit of my stomach that I wasn't alone. Satisfied with not finding anything, I joked that I was just hearing things. But as I continued to sweep, I started to notice something. There was now an eerie glow in the room. When I looked up searching for the source, my eyes landed upon the movie screen. It was shimmering and emitting the eerie glow, but not from the projector, like some kind of strange mirage. Looking closer at it, I saw shadows moving in the reflection of the silver screen. Dozens of them, crowding the theater and sitting in the rows around me. But once I blinked, the screen was back to normal. Again, chalking it up to me being tired, I went back to sweeping and tried to ignore the crushing weight of the silence in the room. Then, a voice, sharp and cold, whispered, "You're in the way of my seat. Move." It came from right behind my left ear. I bolted towards the theater doors and pushed on them, but neither door budged, despite repeated attempts. That's when the smell hit me. It smelled like old rot, decay, and death. I slowly turned around. Wispy dark shadows were now sitting in the rows. But in the middle of the theater, in one of the seats, there was a large, dark shadow in the silhouette of a man. I gasped and dropped my flashlight. It rolled, illuminating the man's, or whatever it was, legs for half a second before my flashlight went out completely. The air in the room turned freezing cold, and the smell had become so overwhelming that I started to gag. I didn't wait around any longer and ran to the back exit, forced the emergency bar, triggering the alarm, and burst into the hallway, leaving my keys, phone, and broom behind. I'm sitting in my car now. It's 6 a.m. I can see the marquee from here. It's not playing the new blockbuster anymore. The letters have been rearranged to spell, "We are still watching." I'm not going back to get my paycheck, or even bothering to hand in my resignation. Nothing on this earth could persuade me to step into that theater ever again. Our second story is called I'm a Cop and I Stopped Taking Calls from Apartment 4B. I've been on the force for 7 years, working the graveyard shift. I've seen the car wrecks, the overdoses, and the gruesome aftermath of violent murders. But nothing prepared me for the calls at the abandoned complex on Miller Street. The city had condemned the place back in 2023 after the fire. It's a skeleton of an apartment building with concrete and charred wood that have remained unchanged and abandoned for years. The first call came in on a Wednesday around 2 a.m. A frantic female voice told dispatch that there was a fire and she couldn't get out of her bathroom. "Please, hurry. I'm trapped. My door won't budge. I can't get out," she screamed. My partner Mike and I took the call because we were the closest. We pulled up to the rusted gates. It was dead silent, save for the wind whistling through the broken windows. We walked in, thinking it was a prank, flashlights cutting through the thick dust, and found apartment 4B. The door was heavy metal, charred black, with a rusted padlock on it. "Dispatch, this is Unit 2. The apartment is boarded up, and no one is here." A voice suddenly came through our radios, but it wasn't panicked. It was eerily calm. "Why won't you look in the apartment, officer?" Mike and I both froze and exchanged a look. "We're leaving," I said. As we walked away, we heard it, clear as day. A woman crying and screaming from the inside of the sealed room, asking for help, screaming for help. But Mike and I booked it out of there as fast as we could. We got calls the next 3 nights from the same woman. Every time we showed up to investigate, we heard a different voice behind the door. A child, an old man, and of course, the woman. It was almost as if whatever it was kept cycling through the voices, all screaming in pained, anguished cries, begging for help. My breaking point was last night. It was pouring down hard and the lightning was flashing in erratic patterns. I was working solo. It had been a quiet night with no calls. I was finishing up my patrol, trying to avoid Miller Street entirely. But my radio started emitting a high-pitched, static tone, and the voice came through. I know it didn't come from the dispatcher. It came directly through my radio, which I know I had turned off. I couldn't get out. I was trapped. Why didn't you save me? Why didn't you look in the room? I didn't answer. Instead, I started driving towards the station, my heart pounding, as icy dread swept over me, causing me to break out in a cold sweat. I wasn't paying attention. I was spooked and trying to go as fast as I could to get back to the station. But that's when I felt it. The hairs on the back of my neck started rising. And that's when I looked in my rearview mirror. Sitting in the back seat, barely visible, was a figure with sooty long hair, raw charred skin, dead gray eyes, and a pained look on its face, staring back at me. I realized it was the woman. I asked in disbelief, "How?" And before I could even finish the sentence, she opened her mouth and let out the most anguished, ear-piercing scream, causing me to slam on the brakes, and the cruiser skidded to a halt on the wet pavement. I turned around, gun drawn, shaking, but the back of the seat was empty. Only the smell of damp ash remained. clinging to the upholstery like a physical weight. I sat in my cruiser in the middle of the street for a long time, trying to rationalize what I had just witnessed. The radio didn't crackle again, but the silence felt heavier than any noise could have been. I arrived back at the station, sat down at my desk, and began searching for any kind of info in regard to the building, the fire, the woman. Looking through the files for the calls that we'd been receiving, not finding anything other than a generic Miller Street building remains secure type of response. But a thought popped into my head, and I decided to glance at the old precinct archives. They revealed details that hadn't been in the dispatch notes. The fire in 2023 was an electrical fire due to wiring that wasn't up to code, that the landlord should have fixed. It started in the maintenance room on the first floor, traveling through the sockets of the building quickly. Before anyone could react, thick, black smoke began billowing from the outlets all over the building and in tenants' apartments. Smelling fiercely of molten plastic and burning insulation. Most tenants were able to get out, but some were unable to evacuate in time. When the fire was put out, firefighters and EMS began traversing the building, or what was left of it, searching for the missing tenants. It was discovered that their door frames were already engulfed, the fire having raced up the metal studs, charring anything around it, leading to fires spreading out of control, the air turning white hot and unbreathable in seconds, trapping them. All had perished either by the fire and smoke or the building debris crushing them. The files contained the usual name, date of birth, description, etc. However, one of the files caught my eye. It gave the description of a woman found trapped behind her bathroom door, showing the same unfortunate circumstances of the fire racing up her door studs, charring the door, setting it ablaze, and making her unable to escape. Even weeks later, I still work as a cop, still take calls, but I stopped taking the ones for Miller Street. Sometimes, I find myself patrolling near it, still trying to rationalize what I had experienced. And even now, in the quiet of my home, miles away from the complex, my mind always goes back to the woman's voice, asking why we didn't save her. Our third story is called I Worked the Night Shift at a Hospital That Was Demolished in 1990. I know how that title sounds. I know I'm going to get comments saying I'm hallucinating, that I'm sleep deprived, or that I'm just trying to get attention. But I need to write this somewhere before I lose my mind entirely, because I can't tell my supervisor. I'm a night shift security guard at a modern, bustling hospital in Southern California. The pay is good, and it's mostly just sitting in a chair, staring at monitors. I started work in February, and I generally work 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The facility I work in is brand new, all glass and steel. But about 2 months ago, into the job, I got moved to covering the sub-basement levels for a few shifts because maintenance was doing pipe work. That's where I found it. There's a sealed freight elevator in the back of the building. It's not on any of our blueprints. I only found it because a contractor told me, whatever you do, don't press B5 on the old elevator by the loading dock. Naturally, I was curious. It was dumb, I know. It was my third night covering that sector. I was bored, and the elevator was just there. It looks like it belongs in the 1950s, dull gray metal with a sliding accordion gate. I stepped in, and the button panel was almost blank, except for a yellow faded button with B5 stamped on it. I pressed it. The elevator didn't hum like a modern one. It groaned, and it felt like I was plunging into the center of the earth. When the doors opened, I wasn't in a modern basement. I was in a hallway with checkered black and white flooring, covered in a thick layer of dust. The lights were pulsing and flickering, and when I stepped out, I could smell it immediately. A sickening combination of antiseptic, wet concrete, and some kind of metallic smell. I shone my flashlight down the hall. Everything was wrecked. Rusted out bed frames were scattered everywhere. The lights had broken covers and were barely hanging on the ceiling. And almost every door was busted in or loosely holding on by one of their hinges. But the weirdest part, the air was freezing cold, and I could hear a low hum, like a million voices whispering at once, just at the edge of my hearing. I saw a plaque on the wall, St. Alexius Hospital Annex, 1968. I quickly went to the first room on the right, to a door that was broken in half and barely held on to what was left of its hinges. Entering the room, there were papers scattered everywhere, and metal drawers that had been pulled out and thrown around the room. But my eyes fell upon a metal desk and a chair, with a notebook laid out. I walked over, my heart beating fast. I opened the notebook. It was a nursing log. The last entry was dated May 14th, 1990. And all it said was, "It won't stop whispering. The anesthesia doesn't work anymore." I was admittedly creeped out, and as I turned around to leave, my flashlight started flickering while heading back towards the hallway. As soon as I stepped through the threshold of the room, the hallway looked eerily longer now, and I had this dreadful feeling that I was being watched. Looking around, I spotted it. There was something standing at the far end of the hallway. It looked like a human, but it was too thin. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It just watched. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. I couldn't see any details, just a deep, unnatural darkness, darker than the shadows around it. I tried to call out, but my voice stuck in my throat. I turned around and scrambled back into the elevator, hammering the ground floor button. The elevator doors took forever to close, and when I frantically looked back, expecting to see a figure running at me, the thing wasn't chasing me. It hadn't even moved an inch. It was just standing there, watching me ascend in the elevator. When I finally got back to the ground level, I was sweating profusely, trying to catch my breath. I went and sat down at my desk, but felt something on my hand. When I looked down, there was a smear of dried blood on it, even though I hadn't touched anything. I've looked up St. Alexius Hospital in my town, and there are absolutely no records of a place with that name existing in 1990. But I clearly saw it with my own eyes. It existed. It was there. Last night I was checking the monitors for the sub-basement level, and saw something. A new, blurry camera feed was showing up in the corner of my screen. It was the hallway with the checkerboard floor, and in the center of the screen, the figure was standing there, looking up at the camera, and the hallway behind it looked normal, almost pristine. I don't know what to do. I have to go back to work tonight, and am terrified of what may happen when I do. But if for some reason you never hear from me again, don't come looking for me. Do not look for the elevator, and do not get on and press the button. The fourth and final story is called I Work as an Auditor at the Gables Motel. The Gables isn't a place you want to stay at. It sits on a stretch of highway in Nevada that Google Maps seems to forget every other update. There was a position open for a night auditor job. It paid $20 an hour under the table and promised minimal guests interaction. I took the job in a heartbeat. When I arrived at the motel, the manager was waiting for me. He gave a tour of the place while explaining all the duties I was required to do while working here. The tour ended back at the front reception desk in the lobby. But before he left, the manager looked at me sternly and told me that there are also 3 rules I must follow at the Gables. Rule number 1, never check someone into room 214. Rule number 2, if you hear a child crying in the parking lot, do not go investigate, turn up the lobby radio, and act like you don't hear anything. Rule number 3, if the phone at the front desk rings and the caller ID says lobby, do not answer it. He then handed me the keys and left. For 3 weeks it was easy. I spent my time eating stale vending machine Cheetos and watching grainy horror movies on my laptop. Then last Tuesday, the fog rolled in so thick I couldn't see the no vacancy sign 10 feet from the window. At 2 a.m. the phone rang. I glanced at the ID. Lobby. My heart did a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. I was standing in the lobby, and the only other phone available was in my hand. I let it ring until it stopped. 5 minutes later, a man walked up to the glass partition. He was wearing a dirty, wet-looking raincoat that dripped brown water onto the carpet. He had a dull, expressionless face with eyes that were glazed, as if he were staring into the distant void. A plain, nondescript nose, lips held in a rigid straight line, and skin like cracked, dry paint with a sickly, yellowish hue that immediately put me on edge. He tapped a single, rough-looking finger on the glass, right over the room layout map, pointing at room 214. "We're full," I managed to croak out, my voice cracking. The man didn't move. He tapped again, with more force. The glass began cracking under his finger, on the verge of breaking. Then, the lobby phone started ringing again. I glanced at the phone, then back at the man. He was gone, and the parking lot was empty. No car, and no wet footprints on the carpet. Just the cracked, spiderweb glass remained from the encounter. The phone started ringing again, and I picked up the phone. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted the obnoxious ringing to end. "Hello?" I whispered. A voice came through, tiny and distorted like it was traveling through miles of static. "You should have known something was wrong," the voice said from the other end. "Especially with how quickly the manager handed you the keys, left, and never came back. Now, you're stuck here, with us." I dropped the receiver trembling, quickly made my way to the back office, and locked the door. As I'm writing this, I can hear someone tapping on the glass, asking to stay in room 214. The phone ringing, and a loud cry from a child echoing in the parking lot that seems to be moving closer and closer with each wail. It's all my fault for ignoring the rules. I should have listened. And now I'm trapped in this room, praying that everything that is happening outside the office goes away. That is all I have for you, and I hope you guys enjoyed these 4 short graveyard shift horror stories. Until next time, you've been listening to Don't Whistle to the Wind, and as the tale ends, the candles have burned down to nothing, and the salt lines we drew have surely failed as the shadows have crept in. Don't let them catch you, and don't turn off the light.